Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
It's time for the Bonnie Sher Show, a whirlwind of wit, wisdom, celebrity, and the boomer life. With a little bit of this and a lot of that and so much more you don't want to miss, here's Bonnie.
Well, hello, old friends, new friends, near friends, afar friends. My name is Bonnie Sher, and I will be your host today through the land of celebrity, through the great boomer generation, and things pertinent to we boomers, as well as the type 1 diabetes community. So get yourselves comfortable. We have a really terrific show. Hugely terrific show. And I'm going to take you right through it. So, please feel free to call in and share your thoughts. You can do that at 323-843-2826. You can also tweet the hashtag BSHER radio, which is what? BShare radio. Before we get this show on the road, I would like to take a moment to thank Wayne Cobham, jazz great, Grammy-winning Wayne Cobham, as opposed to another Wayne Cobham, for having composed my Super Duper Hero theme song. And, of course, to Corey Bowen of Crown and Anchor. You can follow Corey on Twitter. It's Corey Bowen, Boan, or you can hit me up at bonnie@bonniesher.com. I can hook you up with Corey. And we do this, and he allows me to wear his jewelry on the show in exchange for this promotional message. But he makes incredible things. Check him out. When we come back, medical marijuana expert and host of a fellow show here on the big UBN called Elevate the Conversation. We have Dr. Frank D'Ambrosio with us today. And we have Cassidy Robinson, who is my T1 co-host from right here in the great state of California. Be right back.
Your life story is more than the things you do. It's a story built on the moments you make today and the impact you have on others. How big is your story going to be? Live your legend.
And we're back. So let me first of all say hello. Hi, Dr. Frank. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you. I am fine and dandy.
Let me just say this. You look lovely.
You can't see me. That's so cute.
I know what you look like in my mind.
Do I have more hair? No, I won't go there. I'm sorry.
Be better.
Well, I got rid of my beard though today. I didn't want there to be any
That's a personal
confusion.
problem. It's not. I don't want to discuss anything like that.
No personal problems need apply. Okay,
Exactly.
I can go with that. Thanks for taking this time to come in and schmooze with me. As I mentioned to you In my email to you a couple days ago, I do spend a lot of time in the different chat rooms and groups and such on Facebook. And these are the diabetic rooms. And I've noticed that more and more people are talking about, they're asking, they're fishing, they're trying to find out, is this going to make me a hippie? Is this going to get out? What is this? I know, and I can't educate the entire world on my own, which is why I thought it would be a grand idea to ask an expert in the topic. So, Dr. Expert, I have some questions for you, but why don't you give the audience a little bit of an idea of why it is that I called upon you as opposed to, a gynecologist?
Well, again, just to put everything in perspective, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I'm not an internist. I spent an enormous amount of time doing surgery as well as spine surgery. That was my specialty. And the beautiful thing about cannabis is that it's inclusive. A gynecologist, if he or she chose to actually take up this cause and to spend time working on cannabis and cannabis as medicine, they could do it.
Understood.
It's a question of just because you're an internist, you do it. It's not a question of gynecologists can't do it. Anyone could do it. So I have, chosen to go down a path that I really wasn't in any way, familiar with. Dealing with pain management was always a part of my practice, whether through surgical intervention or whether through the post-operative phase. I was one of those physicians who did an enormous amount of work with using opioids for post-operative pain. And I was very, very unsatisfied, as we now know, we're in the middle of a national opioid epidemic, that opioids are not the answer. And if they are an answer, it's a short-term answer that is incredibly high risk to the patients. So the path that I came to this started through opioids and using an alternative way to achieve pain management in my post-operative surgical patients. Now, we eventually got to the point where we're at right now where opioids are completely out of my armamentarium. I have not written an opioid prescription in 15 years. And I think that pain still exists. So what are the options? If you're not going to use opioids, what are the options? And that's what eventually got me into cannabis, to try to see if cannabis would work for patients in the post-operative or in the chronic pain field. And it did. And I was incredibly surprised, not only by how well it worked, by how not dangerous cannabis is. Every medicine that we give has what they call a lethal dose 50. That means that amount of medicine that you can take, that 50% of the time you will wind up dying. I mean, the lethal dose that you take. Opioids, it's a very, very low number. If you took 6 or 8 OxyContins, you have a 50% chance that you'll die from that. Cannabis, the lethal dose 50 for cannabis has never been achieved. The theoretical lethal dose 50 for cannabis, you would have to smoke 20 pounds of cannabis in 30 minutes. It's unachievable. So it's a safe alternative to the pain medications, to the opioids that are killing people in this country right now. And that's what brought me here. And I'm sure that if there was a gynecologist who was out there who was dealing with women who were having postpartum depression, and these women started taking medicine, which was causing them to have a significant amount of death rate, I wouldn't be surprised if they found cannabis for that reason. Mm-hmm. So the beautiful thing about cannabis is that it doesn't discriminate as far as which physicians can either get involved in it, and it gives you different pathways to try to find out how cannabis will work.
Okay, just to take a second, One of the questions that came to me brings up the issue of different formularies in terms of a CBD oil versus the efficacy of smoking or imbibing, eating, however way one is consuming the cannabis. Um, does it really make a difference in which way, as far as pain is concerned? I've seen recently pain patches, cannabis pain patches. I've seen, of course, the creams, lotions, and such. What do you think? I mean, does it really make a difference from the pharmaceutical side of it, which is, is there an amount of CBD oil that you need to watch out for? Or is it all sort of lumped into one big package, and is that the longest question in history?
Well, listen, it's a legitimate question, but the real issue is that how does cannabis work? Cannabis works by attaching to receptors either in the brain or in the periphery that is attached to this thing called the endocannabinoid system. And there are certain receptors called the CB1 receptors that are in the brain. And in the periphery of your body, there are the CB2 receptors. Now, cannabis works by getting into your body. It doesn't matter ultimately how it gets into your body. It matters that it gets into your body. The quickest way for cannabis to get into your bloodstream is through the lungs. Mm-hmm. It's immediate. And there are two ways to get it into your lungs. The first is to smoke the flower, and the second is to use these vapor pens. Now, intuitively, inhaling burnt carbon fibers into your lungs, creating smoke, is not necessarily a healthy thing to do. Now, there has never been a study that's proven that smoking cannabis will lead to long-term lung disease or cancer. It has been associated with bronchitis, and smokers do get irritation of the bronchial tree. Using a vapor pen, which does not have any smoke, will allow you to get rapid uptake of the cannabis, of the medicine, without the side effects or the potential issue of bronchitis. That's the quickest way to get into your system. Now, there are people who don't want to use anything going into their lungs. There are people with COPD, people with asthma. They still want to be able to get the medicine into their system. And those people normally go through the edible route. The difference between the edible route and the inhaling route into the lungs is the edible route has to be absorbed through our GI tract, through the bloodstream called the splanchnic system. And when it gets absorbed, number one, it takes 45 minutes to take effect. And number two, it lasts much, much longer than if you just inhaled it into your lungs. And they've done the physiological studies on this. The other problem with taking the edibles is there's no way to titrate it. If you're inhaling something and you start to get the psychoactive effect of the THC, for example, you'll know immediately when to stop. So, okay, this is enough. I don't want this. When you take the edibles, you're in for a 4-hour ride. You've committed. It's going to take 45 minutes to hit, and then you are in. You can't get out. And there are some people who react to the edibles rather strongly, and they panic, and they want to go to the emergency room, and it's a whole nightmare. But it is absolutely does not have the same amount of potential danger or bronchitis or anything like that as if you would inhale it. Now, other people use sprays, and it's a little bit quicker because it doesn't have to goes under your tongue. It doesn't have to go all the way into your GI tract in order to get absorbed. Makes it goes a little bit faster. And then other people like to put these creams on their skin. No one has ever gotten the elevated psychotropic effect of THC by putting a cream on their skin. It just doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, it doesn't matter how you get it for the medicinal effect, not about all the side effects and how long it takes. But ultimately, it doesn't matter how you get it into your system. it matters that you get it into your system.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to hold on right 1 second for us. We have to take a break. And I want to know more, so stand by a minute for me, please, Dr. Frank. And let's go to this. Roll this, please, Jarvis.
To be at peace with myself is the most prominent thing, and I am at peace with myself. I didn't deal this deck, I'm just playing the game. That's all. That's it. Meals on Wheels has given me a mode of freedom that I wouldn't have otherwise. And making sure they get the nutrition that I need, and it's a balanced meal. My name is Maurice McGriff. America, let's do lunch.
Drop off a hot meal and say hello. Volunteer by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
Type 1 diabetes can be living in anyone.
Type 1 diabetes is when your pancreas doesn't produce insulin. It's not caused by your diet. It's not caused by anything you did.
Type 1 diabetes can be very serious.
Blindness, amputation.
Learn more about type 1 diabetes.
Help support JDRF finding a cure.
T1D looks like my brother.
T1D looks like a friend.
Type 1 diabetes looks like me.
And we're back. As we have just brought up the T1D issue, one of the questions that I had sent to me is, what are the effects on glucose levels just from the action? I mean, obviously there are going to be more carbs if you're eating a jelly ring, something which has been made with glucose. But just the pure cannabis itself, will it have an effect on your glucose level?
We have no idea.
Okay, so there's no warning. That was one of the questions.
Well, here's what I have found in the articles that I've read, is that it has no effect independently on glucose. Mm-hmm. It has no effect independently on insulin dosages. It has no known effect. It doesn't mean that, as you're right, if you're eating an edible that's going to have glucose in it, yeah, your glucose is probably going to go up. But there's nothing that's been shown at this particular point that glucose has any influence whatsoever on glucose or insulin.
Excellent. Well, and then there's, of course, even if you're smoking it and not eating it, there's the munchie portion of the program, so I hear. But that one has to be able to control the way we diabetics have learned to control everything else, or at least bolus for those extra carbs, because maybe we are going to get the munchies. It could. I've just heard this, through the grapevine. I really don't know myself. Yeah, they're even laughing in the studio right now. Well, there's one laugh. That was a Jarvis laugh.
What's Jarvis doing?
He's making our show come to life.
Listen, he is a magician.
Tell me about it. If I would have known about Jarvis, I never would have gotten married. But that's a story for another show. Okay, another question is, somebody was asking me about the potential effectiveness. On different neuropathies, be they autonomic or peripheral.
Let me tell you this. And again, I'm going to give what little information we do know about neurons and cannabis. We know, based upon the research that's been done in Israel over the past 20 years, that cannabis is neuroprotective. It allows the nerve to recover when injured at a much quicker rate than if it was not in your system. They cite a study that was done in Israel where they traumatized rats. They created essentially a small concussion for rats. They pre-treated some of the rats with cannabis, and other rats they did not. And they found to a statistically significant level that the rats that were pre-treated with cannabis, their brains recovered at a much faster rate. We know that cannabis lowers your blood pressure. And one of the reasons why people use it for glaucoma is because it lowers the blood pressure in your eye, or the intraocular pressure in your eyes.
That makes sense, yeah.
But it only decreases that pressure when people are using it, when it's active in your system. Once the 4 hours of the effectiveness of the cannabis is over, the pressure goes right back up. But what it really does, and the real benefit to glaucoma patients, is that it protects the optic nerve. If you continue to traumatize the optic nerve with increased pressure, at some point you'll go blind because the optic nerve can't take that much of a hit. Mm-hmm. The cannabis, even though it's decreasing the intraocular pressure, the real beauty of it is that it's decreasing the ability of the optic nerve not to recover. So it neuroprotects the optic nerve. As far as, so we know it works on the nerves. I can tell you anecdotally, only because, again, there are no studies, that my patients with diabetic peripheral neuropathy use cannabis and they swear by it. They think it's the only thing, or they tell me it's the only thing that's ever worked to get rid of their neural pain.
I don't doubt that. I've seen plenty of what the pharmaceutical companies have come up and offered to people with issues of different neuropathies, and they maybe it's been a valiant effort, but I still haven't seen nor felt any great effect of anything. You don't know my story. I've been a T1 for 50 years now, and stuff happens along the way. And I think we've already identified me as somebody who has used cannabis. I have tried some of the creams. I've tried them on my back. I carry a lot of lower back issues. When I had the hip replacement, I figured it couldn't hurt, and I was getting pretty tired of the OxyContin and oxycodone because of the side effects that it brought along. So I was just as happy, but and I think diabetics will understand this also. Insulin is the same kind of drug. The same drug that keeps us alive, 2-3 extra units will kill us. So
right. Let me just say this, though, Bonnie. There are so many new strains that are being created every day that just because you haven't found the strain that is helping you, it could be not that you're resistant to be able to be helped by this, is that you haven't found the right strain. What I tell my patients is that you got to kiss a lot of frogs before you find that prince of a strain.
Absolutely. Is there anything? Is there any difference between a sativa? I mean, I know there's a difference, but in the effects between a sativa and an OG or something in that family, or is a hybrid? I mean, does it really make any difference?
Well, again, it's the prince. It's kissing the frogs again. I mean, some people respond really well to sativas. It keeps them awake. It keeps them alert. People respond really well to indicas because they want to get couch
That's
locked.
the word.
They're each going to have their effects, and just from the mental standpoint, with regards to the medicine for what it's trying to treat, you may find that there's a hybrid that has X%, 40% of sativa, 60% of indica that works perfectly for what you're trying to get, because you're getting the best of both, not only from a mental standpoint, but also from a medicinal standpoint. It's just so impossible to predict. There's no broad strokes. There's no one strain answer. What I always tell my patients, the first time you go into a new dispensary, buy the least amount of as many different strains as you can possibly afford. Take them home, test them, see what you like, what you don't like, if you feel the results. After you've tested everything, then go back and make the purchase if you found the strain that works for you.
It's sound advice. Dr. Frank, afraid we're going to have to wrap this up. I thank you so much for bringing your information and yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you that Dr. Frank does have a show here on UBN, and it is called Elevate the Conversation. Dr. Frank streams on Wednesday evening, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And you are in Studio One, aren't you?
I am in Studio One. Right now I'm not. But normally when I do the show, I am.
Okay, so you still look for the same name. And you're still going to find Dr. Frank along with Captain Ron.
Captain Ron. He's out there. He's out on the ocean blue today.
You know, some people get lucky.
Right, but
don't you live near the ocean yourself? I mean, wait a minute here. I'm starting to almost feel sorry for you, but I got right over it.
Listen, I'll take whatever feelings you send my way, Bonnie. Thank you once
any
again.
old time. Look,
speak to your patients.
Thank you, and
Bye,
thank
everybody.
you. We'll see you soon. Take good care. Thanks, Frank. See, all you naysayers, I told you. Anyway, if you are okay, we'll just move on from there because I'll get in trouble if I talk anymore. So I think we've done that, and we've done that, and we've told them, oh, I know where we are. We're back to the diabetes again. And what I want to, as we go to break, I'd like to acknowledge the important work of the Diabetes Research Institute and encourage you to please support their efforts. There are millions of children and adults with diabetes who dream of a cure for this devastating disease. We all dream of a time where we can live without the painful multiple daily finger pricks, insulin injections, site placement for CGMs and pumps, and of course facing the possibilities of life-threatening complications. But I'm here to tell you that the scientists at the Diabetes Research Organization are working hard to make that dream a reality, and to do so by finding a biological cure. And they are advancing research to patients and changing lives, and you can visit them online, and I pray that you do at diabetesresearch.org. Our song of the day should be coming up next. So we're going to be listening to a song called Kevin Spacey, and the artist is Arthur Curson. So let's hear it for Kevin Spacey.
Judy Garland sang The Love of Mr. Gable. He had the kind of kisses she would sigh for. Marilyn Monroe sang, Happy birthday, Mr. President. It didn't please his missus and was a song she'd have to die for. Who can forget how Carol Burnett was so glad to make the time for John Foster Dulles? Though I love all of their voices and I'm mad about their choices, I'm gonna sing of someone else instead, who may not be quite as famous as they are, but isn't dead. Before I burst into song, I wanna say, there are two things I regret. We haven't met yet. And I'm not really sure that he's gay. Oh. I'm much too old to fall in love again. But when I do, it will be you, Kevin Spacey, the perfect pair. I'll be Gay George, you'll be my Gracie. Kevin, come home here with me. If truth be told, I'm stalling love again. I'm incomplete until we meet, Kevin Spacey. We'll go everywhere. We'll be the drag, Cagney and Lacey. Kevin, come home here with me. I'm not in love with Kaiser Soze on the run. And I don't love Jim Williams or even his smoking gun. I tell you, when all the hurly-burly's done, though it's hell being alone, I want just you, not your demented, dramatis persona. I have it, holding all in love again, the perfect plan. And you're the man, Kevin Spacey, so much to share, but dare I court with the short crazy Kevin? Our home will be heaven. Kevin Spacey, Arthur Curson's crazy for you. I'm not finished. I hate the cold. I'm calling love again through every storm. I'll keep you warm, Kevin Spacey.
Now you know why that song is called Kevin Spacey. I actually was in the house the night that was recorded, and he wondered if Kevin was gay. Well, from his grave now he knows the truth. But in the meantime, welcome back to the Bonnie Sher Show, Boomer Life. And my co-host for today is Cassidy Robinson, who is a member of the T1D, Type 1 Diabetes, a community from right here in the great state of California. Hello, Cassidy. Thank you so much for sitting in with me.
Hey, I'm excited to be with you from back in California.
Well, why don't you turn your volume down, please, Cassidy?
Okie dokie. There we go. Better for you?
Is that better, Jarvis? Yes, Jarvis says yes. Someday I'll show all of you Jarvis so you don't think I'm just talking to a wall. Because Jarvis is far more than a wall. Cassidy, tell us what you have been doing. I already know, but I want you to tell our viewers and listeners because I just think it's fantastic.
Yeah, in case anyone missed my first time on the show, I just got done this summer cycling cross country as part of Beyond Type 1's team Bike Beyond. There were 20 of us living with type 1 diabetes, and we cycled from Brooklyn to San Francisco. It was 4,200 miles.
And how long did that take to do?
We were on the road for 10 weeks, 70 days.
And you remember every mile, I'll bet. And how many were there of you in your group?
There were 20 of us total. It was 19 type 1 diabetics and one mother of a type 1 diabetic.
Amazing. How did this come to be? I mean, was this, did you have people giving you money by the mile? Was this done as a fundraiser? Give me a little background, or I know the background, but tell everybody else too.
Yeah, so Beyond Type 1 is a nonprofit. And so we wrote on their behalf with a team goal of raising $100,000 by the end of our ride. We ended up hitting our $100,000 mark, I believe, either 2 days or the day before we left New York. And by the end of the 10 weeks, after a number of fundraisers in cities like Cleveland and Nashville and Napa, we ended up raising, right now our current total is $788,000 to support the Beyond Type 1 portfolio, which includes cure research as well as funding for programs that like help diabetics live today.
That's just phenomenal. That's just phenomenal. Did the 20 of you know each other before you started this, or did you come together through the ride itself?
Yeah, we were complete strangers. One of my teammates likes to say that we internet dated each other for 6 months before we actually met. The 20 of us were an international team. We represented 14 states in the U.S. and 5 countries. And we basically talked about every day on Facebook Messenger and Facebook chat until we all came together in June in New York City and actually like got to hug each other for the first time before we set out like on our wild adventure across America.
Oh, that was some kind of adventure. I can't imagine what that must have felt like. 'Cause, I mean, you know my story. I don't ride a stationary bicycle, let alone ride a bicycle across country. And on a trip like that, I would imagine you have, the issues of being type 1s, changing time zones rapidly, the time, aside from keeping your insulin on timing your meals, everything changes because it's not like you're going from Philadelphia to Chicago and then you're going to be there and wait, and you're going to be there a couple of weeks until you can reverse everything and pick those hours back up. How was general health among your riders? And I know that there were probably some sore muscles, but
I was actually surprised that like physically how easy it was to cycle cross country. Not that it was easy, but I expected it to be, as a non-cyclist, like before we started this trip, I expected it to be physically much harder than it was. The diabetes management was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I had fairly good management before we started, like probably the best management I've had in my 24 years as a type 1 diabetic. And when we got on the trip, things went absolutely crazy. What you're saying is like, so we were on the road for 70 days. I think we hit 61 or 62 different cities in those 72 days or 70 days, which meant like we were not only in a new city basically every night, we also routed ourselves across the country. So we didn't have a profile of what the rides looked like basically until the night before. So we basically hopped on our bikes every morning, nearly blind. We knew our end destination because there was a small group of us that worked for 6 months to plan all of the logistics, but we didn't know what the actual ride was going to look like. So what was profoundly interesting to me during the ride and even reflecting back afterward is that I thought I'd have massive decreases in my insulin requirements. I knew I'd be hungry from burning calories and I'd have to supplement for that. But my basal insulin requirements doubled during the ride. I took much more insulin and my blood sugar went crazy. I saw highs like I haven't seen in years. 3s and 400s, 500 one time I tested at. And you'd think we cycled an average of about 70 miles a day for 10 weeks. I completely thought that my insulin requirements would like drop to nearly nothing.
Right. That's certainly a reasonable assumption. But you found that no, they were. And what about other members of your team? Did anybody else talk about the same things? I mean, did you have conversations about your diabetes? I would imagine, but I'll let you answer.
We absolutely did. Some of us, like myself, are just generally, I'm very vocal about what my blood sugar is, and I talk through my bolusing strategies in my everyday life, let alone like when I'm actually on the road with 19 other diabetics. So we did see kind of across the board, I think, increased like higher blood sugar numbers. And I think a lot of us saw that once we started climbing, that when we were climbing through the Rockies and climbing through the Sierra Nevada. Of course you were. It was really hard. It was really difficult.
So. Were you all basically in the same kind of diets?
Absolutely not. The best thing about our team is that all of us have like different diagnosis stories, different ways of managing our diabetes, and also different dietary restrictions, right? So,
okay, let me rephrase the question. Was there any conversation about how different people's eating would have changed it for them in a certain way? Were you all kind of doing your own research at the same time about what your bodies could really handle and how it goes about doing that? It's interesting the body's pretty perfect, except if your pancreas leaves you, or decides to quit on you. But I always find it very interesting how two different T1s can be in terms of what will make that glucose go up or fall other than insulin and food. It always amazes me the way my emotions can trigger my glucose. And I've read lots of books, and I haven't found a doctor yet who can tell me how to bolus for depression. And or fear, or any of those feelings that at some point, I mean, we're pretty good at acknowledging things, I think, as a group, but it's those factors. Maybe you're fearful of driving or riding up into the mountains. I mean, I know I would be. Of course, I'm afraid of everything.
Well, where that came into play for me was with, I'm not a cyclist, so it was the first time I ever rode a bike next to cars. And on the East Coast, when we were on the Eastern Seaboard, we had a fair amount of city riding. I mean, we rode through Philadelphia, we rode through Washington, D.C., we rode through Baltimore and through Pittsburgh, and cars drive fast everywhere. They drive extremely fast in cities. And then as we got further along toward the west, when we were in Kansas and when we got to Utah and Nevada, we saw a lot of trucks, and it's very intimidating. I think it puts you in the frame of mind to acknowledge how fragile the human body is, right? Like, my body is the strongest it's ever been right now, but compared to an 18-wheeler, my body is extremely fragile. And that definitely affected my blood sugar. I mean, the anxiety that creates. One, for me, I like psych myself out of it, right? My way of going about that is to not acknowledge that I'm going to be fearful. I refuse to be afraid. But at the end of the day, that catches up to you at some point, and my blood sugar just shoots through the roof when I get stressed from things like that.
Well, my hat's off to you and your 19 cohorts and the mother who went along on that trip. I don't know. You would have probably had to give me, tequila.
We drank some tequila. You would have fit in perfectly.
You see, I'm such a big drinker. I drink about as much as I ride bicycles. Now, and see, there goes Jarvis again. He's looking at his notes to make sure that I'm telling you the truth. You know the truth, Jarvis. I want you to please, first of all, before I let you go, please tell our audience how they can follow you, how they can learn more about Beyond Type 1. Tell us about Cassidy and sharing with us how we can learn more.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a 24-year, I'll be 25 years as type T1D in January. So I've had a long, interesting journey. It's been really fun through Bike Beyond this summer to share that with children and parents, with adults across the country who don't know about diabetes. But one of the coolest things that happened during our ride was that we were actually filmed for a documentary. And so it's premiering in LA on Tuesday as World Diabetes Day celebration, really. My teammates are going to start flying it
14th. We're talking November 14th.
The Landmark Theater is going to be our film, right? We get to watch our journey play out on a big, giant movie screen, which is terrifying to me in more ways than one.
You've already done the hard part, okay? Trust me when I tell you. You've already done the toughest part. Just go have fun.
Yeah, that film will be eventually made available, like first streaming on, I believe, Netflix and HBO. So our hope is that as many hundreds of people as we impacted on the road this summer, hopefully we can impact tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people once they watch our journey play out.
Well, you gave me goosebumps. I don't know if I'm going to be able to physically make it there on the 14th, but I'll be talking about it on my social media and try and get the word out. Cassidy, my dear, you rock. Okay, I don't say that a lot, but you do, and I just thank you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my bottom, which is not on a bicycle, you might notice. But again, my dear, all the best to you, and please stay in touch and let us know what else you're up to. Lots of inquiring minds want to know. Thanks.
Always
Take care.
Thanks, Bonnie.
You be good. Amazing, huh? Well, if any of our fellow T1s would like to be a co-host with me on an episode of the Bonnie Sher Show, it's really quite simple. All you have to do is write to me, and you're going to write to Bonnie at BonnieSher.com. I'll get right back to you, and we'll set up a date. It's really just that simple. And now a little word from Quest Diagnostics. Baby boomers, why you need to be tested for Hep C.
I live in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm a social worker. When I found out that I had hepatitis C, I was a single mother, and I was absolutely terrified.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, estimates there are close to 3 million baby boomers infected with hepatitis C. Because there can be no symptoms for decades, most don't even know it. But if detected in time, Hep C can be cured, and the treatment is simple.
Today I feel great. I'm a healthy 65-year-old. I bike to work, I go to the gym, and I've cleared the virus.
The CDC is urging everybody born between 1945 and 1965 to get tested. It's an easy one-time blood test that may be covered by insurance.
I got a disease that could have killed me, but I saved my own life by getting tested.
Don't wait. Ask your doctor about getting tested for Hep C, because knowing is everything.
Today's Boomer News comes to us from Pfizer. Patti LaBelle helps boomers get a new attitude.
Patti LaBelle is looking for backup singers, 65 and older, who boom.
I'm so excited. I mean, just to sing one note in front of Patti, it's just like, I'm done. That's it. I'm good. Hi, Patti.
Hi, sweetie.
I am such a big fan of yours.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
Well, right now, girl, you better sing. Terry, cue it up, baby.
What the singers don't know is that we rigged the microphone so it sounds like they have pneumococcal pneumonia, a potentially serious but vaccine-preventable disease.
I'm feeling good from my hat to my shoes. Know where I'm going and
I'm in control, my ways of you. 'Cause I got love like I never knew.
Then, Patty let the singers in on it.
I got you.
Even if you're healthy, pneumococcal pneumonia can strike anywhere, anytime, and keep you from doing the things you love.
I'm feeling good from my head to my shoes. Know where I'm going and I know what to do.
If you're 65 or older, even if you're healthy, get a new attitude about the risks of pneumococcal pneumonia and talk to your doctor about the importance of vaccination.
Fun, huh? We like that. And yes, I went and had my vaccination. Now we're back, and I have some views from my soapbox, which, of course, as you probably know by now, is my take on who is to be congratulated, and in the alternative, who I really think should be ashamed of themselves. So let's start out. And here's something rare, because I'd like to give a shout out to the president for, see, you're waiting for this, right? For signing into law the Collins and Shaheen's bill on diabetes. This law will establish a commission on treatment and prevention. Yes. Now, my shout down, it sounds more like me, is to Senator Ted Cruz for his comment after the mass shooting tragedy in Texas, where his spouse died. Well, it's really unfortunate that the media, after any murder or tragedy, that they feel they need to politicize it. Well, when else would be a better time would be one. And secondly, I never heard him comment on how maybe we could make our country safer. Well, nothing I can do about that except share it with you. So, before we say goodbye today, I'd like to thank today's guest, Dr. Frank D'Ambrosio, also known as Dr. Frank, and of course, the lovely T1 co-host Cassidy Robinson. That's my show, and I hope you'll return next week for another 50-minute trip through the land of Bonnie, through the land of boomers, and the T1D community. Until then, please visit the new and improved BonnieSher.com. Follow the #1 BShare on Twitter, and like the Bonnie Sings Lena Facebook fan page. Now, I know many of you are aware of the wonderful relationship that I had with the late, great Sammy Davis Jr. He was my boss, he was my mentor, and he was my friend. And what I like to do to close each week's show is to sort of end Carol Burnett style with a nod and a wink to you, Mr. D. Always to you. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you next week.